Hey, welcome. Perfect time.
Recording in progress.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Planning Commission on Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. This meeting is called to order. I'll request staff to call the roll for commissioners who are present and not. Leslie?
I'm wondering if there's really bad echo. Do the rest of you? Okay, can we see if we can, sorry, it's a little distracting. Testing. Oh yeah, much better. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, roll call. Commissioner Harris. Here. Commissioner Hinman.
Here.
Commissioner Mercado has an excused absence tonight. Commissioner Samudzi.
Here.
Commissioner Schock.
Here.
Vice Chair Saudi.
Here.
And Chair Previtali.
Here. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the order of the agenda. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda? Order may only be changed by a majority vote of the commissioners present. Seeing none, we'll move on. Next, we'll move on to the meeting procedures. I'd like to ask staff to address how public comment will work this evening. Leslie?
Yes, thank you. In response to Assembly Bill 361, the City of San Rafael is offering teleconference without complying with the procedural requirements of Government Code Section 54953B3. This meeting is being recorded and being held in person, virtually using Zoom, and is being streamed live to YouTube at youtube.com/City of San Rafael. YouTube viewers are welcome to attend by telephone by calling 669-444-9171 and entering the meeting ID, which is 897-4566-6511#, or watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda. The meeting ID and telephone number are also as mentioned on the agenda. When the chair opens the public comment, we will first take public comment for those in attendance here in the chamber, followed by those in virtual attendance. If you are participating by telephone tonight and wish to provide comments, you will press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period. Once you hear a notification that the host is inviting you to speak, you press *6 to unmute yourself. At the chair's discretion, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. If you submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, it has been forwarded to the Planning Commission. Closed captioning is available for this meeting using the icon at the bottom of the Zoom webinar screen or through the link on your YouTube.
Great, thanks, Leslie. Let me now describe how the meeting procedures will work. We will begin with a staff report. Members of the public will then be invited to speak. You will have 3 minutes for public comment. Commissioners will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff, the applicant, or the public after each segment. We will close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the commission for discussion and action if necessary. Now we'll move on to urgent communication. Anyone with an urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda may address the commission at this time. Leslie?
There's someone here in the chambers who wishes to speak on items not on the agenda? No, we have one member from the public, virtually, Grace Garrity, and let me actually use this. Grace, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Grace Garrity and a 36-year resident
Grace,
of
are you out there?
Terra. Yes.
Oh, I see that she is speaking and we're
Yeah.
seeing. Grace, if you wouldn't mind halting for a moment, we'll give you your 3 minutes, but we can't hear you.
Let's see. Looks like
Yeah.
you have yourself muted. There you go. Oops.
Hello, can you hear me?
No?
No, we can't hear you.
Grace, it looks like you're unmuted now.
Yes, I am unmuted.
Microphone. It can be in the computer settings.
Well, it is picking up her voice.
Oh, no, but like, oh, yeah.
So this is, I can get to my, 1 second, please. Grace did provide her letter as an email. So if it's okay, I will just read it out loud. Oops, that's my presentation.
Grace, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can't hear you. So Leslie's going to read your letter out loud as she mentioned.
Apologies.
Can you let us know we can read what you're saying strangely. So can you let us know if that's okay with you? Grace, are you out there again?
I think her name would be up if she was out there. Yeah.
Should I?
Okay, Grace, apologies. We're not sure what's going on here, but I will read your letter. So I will.
Thank you.
So this is the Planning Commission 9/13/22 public comment period. I'm Grace Garrity and a 36-year resident of Terra Linda. To have uniformity among city boards, committees, and commissions and improve efficiencies, the City Council on June 6, 2022 changed the bylaws, composition, duties, including removal of budget review authority, term of office, meeting frequency, etc., for several boards and committees. City Council will continue this process with changes to the Planning Commission's power and duties. For example, meeting frequency, commission composition, other operations of the Planning Commission shall be set by resolution of the Council. The Planning Commission shall not be charged with the duty of making investigations or filing reports. It's puzzling that under 2.16.110, Powers and Duties of Planning Commission, it states, it shall be the duty of the members of the Planning Commission to inform themselves. However, other than training on the Brown Act, commissioners do not get a handbook with the minimum basics such as General Plan 2040, Downtown Precise Plan, housing elements, etc. I'd like to know what you think of the proposed changes. Has the city met with you to discuss the proposed changes? Will this help you serve the community more? Thank you for listening and considering this matter. So concludes her comments.
Thank you. And per protocol, is there any opportunity for any sort of comment from the city on that comment?
Well, the Planning Commission is not allowed to comment on anything that's not on the agenda.
Understood.
But the City Council has approved several changes to the boards and commission. Those that affected the Planning Commission including for the future, there will be district representatives plus 3 at-large representatives. These changes for the Planning Commission have already been approved and the second reading occurred, and they took effect at the end of, I believe it was July, right before. That's why we held off on having Commissioner Mercado and Commissioner Haveman reappointed, because we were waiting for those to take effect. So those are in effect, and hopefully, Grace, you can read your comments as well at the City Council. And for anyone else who has interested in the boards and commission, I would direct it to this time period during the city council meeting. And again, Grace, apologies for the technical difficulties here tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, we'll now move on to the consent calendar, which has one item, approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 9th, 2022. The recommended action is to approve the minutes as submitted. Are there any comments from the public on the consent calendar? Leslie?
If you'd wish to speak on the consent calendar in the chambers, or if you're in attendance, please use the raise a hand icon or *9 if you are phoning in. And no one wishes to speak.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll ask if there are any comments from the commission. And if there are no comments or edits, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Great. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, let's conduct a roll call. Leslie?
Yes, so that was moved by Commissioner Samudzi and seconded by Vice Chair Saudi. So for the roll call, Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
Commissioner Hayman.
Yes.
Commissioner Mercado's absent. Commissioner Samudzi.
Yes.
Commissioner Schock.
Yes.
Vice Chair Saudi.
Yes.
And Chair Prabhatali.
Yes. All right, thank you. So now we will move on to the public hearings, and the first item on the agenda is 326 and 308 Mission Avenue. This is a comment on the draft environmental impact report, which assesses impacts of the Eldersley Retirement Community Development Plan Amendment Project located at 326 and 308 Mission Avenue. And the project planner is Janie Alsup, and she is a contract planner. Hello. Now we'll move on to the presentation from staff. And that would include the staff report, I suppose.
Yes. Good evening, Chair Prabhatali and members of the commission. I'm Janie Alsup, the contract planner and assigned to this project. And the purpose of the meeting tonight is to provide an opportunity for the public and the Planning Commission to comment on the draft EIR that has been prepared for the Aldersley project located at 326 Mission. It also includes a parcel at 308 Mission. You can see on this map the subject site. 308 Mission is a parcel adjacent to the main campus, shown right here. That is a single family home, but is part of the approved development plan for the campus and is currently used for office. You can see from this site that the project, from the map, that the project site is along the north side of Mission Avenue. It also has frontage on Bell Avenue on the north side of the property. And it is located just north of the Montecito commercial sub area that is contained in the recently approved downtown specific plan. Before I go further with the slides, and I have several slides, most of which are from the draft EIR itself. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly, but I'll be happy to go back to any of the slides, but it's all information that's contained in the draft EIR and the staff report. Okay, so let me just go over the format of the staff presentation this evening. Again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive comments. So there will be no decisions made this evening on the draft EIR or on the project applications. There is no real requirement under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, for a public meeting, but it has been customary for the City of San Rafael to hold this as another opportunity for members of the public to become familiar with the project and to submit comments verbally, orally during the meeting as well as written. So the first part of the presentation will be an overview of the project, and the second part will be an overview of the key conclusions in the draft EIR. So going back to the slides, this slide shows the existing conditions of the site, and the buildings that are shown hatched represent the buildings that are proposed to be demolished as part of the proposed project. So the site is 2.9 acres, again, on the north side of Mission Avenue, extending up to Bell. The property does slope uphill from Mission Avenue. It slopes about 50 feet up to the north to Bell Avenue. The main access is along Mission Avenue. There is a service access along Bell Avenue that we'll get into more as we review the project. It is located within the Montecito Happy Valley neighborhood, which is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. And as I mentioned before, it's just north of the sub area of the Montecito commercial area. The existing uses on the site, it is a residential care facility with assisted living and memory care. There are 35 beds in the memory care facility. There is extended care and convalescent and skilled nursing beds. There are currently 20 beds that operate in this capacity. And there are 55 independent living units on the site. And the independent living units they actually count as dwelling units because they are independent. They have a bathroom and a kitchen. The other categories would not really qualify as a dwelling unit, but the independent living units do. Quickly, in the way of background, there's quite a history with Aldersley. It was established on this site in 1921 as a retirement community for Danish immigrants. And since then, over the years, the project or site has evolved to meet the changing needs of the residents. And none of the original buildings of the Aldersley campus remain. Just because we'll be talking about historic buildings, I thought I would just put that out there. The oldest building, the minor building, it was built in 1945. So none of the real original buildings from the 20s remain on the campus. They've been gone for some time. More on the background of the project, the existing buildings on the campus, they reflect different styles during the periods of redevelopment of the site. And the most recent major development on the property was the 30-unit assisted living memory care facility. The building is Rosenborg on the east side of the project site. It was completed in 2004. At the same time, the development plan, basically the existing zoning was established for the project. As part of the Rosenborg, a parking garage was constructed and improvements were made to the loading facilities that occur along Bell Avenue. So there are 3 applications associated with the proposed project. It's currently a planned development, and there is an approved development plan. The proposed project would require an amendment to the approved development plan, so it's essentially a rezoning of the site to reflect what they're proposing currently. There's also an approved use permit that was approved back in the early 2000s. Similarly, this use permit would need to be revised to reflect the changes that would be proposed as part of the proposed project. Although I would note that the actual use of the project and the types of facilities that are being provided or would be provided would not change. It's essentially the same types of uses, the same types of project components, independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing as what is existing. So as far as what the existing use is and the proposed use, very, very similar, almost identical to what's happening today. And the environmental and design review permit for phases 1 through 3, I should say. So This project was reviewed by the Design Review Board back in late last year in November, or actually early December, and received a recommendation to the Planning Commission for approval. So the proposed project actually involves, as I mentioned and shown on the plan, demolition of several buildings, renovation of a couple of existing buildings, and construction of new buildings on the site. The most prominent new construction would be a new 4-story independent living building along Mission Avenue. At a later phase, phase 3, a new independent living building is also proposed on the western portion of the site. And I have some site plans that will orient you. A new service building along Bell Avenue, new outdoor spaces, including a memory care garden associated with Rosenborg, an activity lawn, Rose Terrace, and other outdoor improvements to improve accessibility to the residents. On-site parking spaces would increase from the existing 48 to 56 spaces. So compared to the existing facilities, the proposed project would result in 14 net new independent living units, an increase from 55 to 69 units. The number of assisted living and memory care beds would be the same, and the number of skilled nursing beds would be the same as well. I mentioned that the project would be built in 3 phases. Originally, 4 phases were proposed when the project was initially submitted. And after receiving comments from neighbors and also looking more closely at the construction phasing aspect of the site, the applicant revised the project plans and the phasing plan to consolidate into 3 phases. So this represents phase 1. You can see the the independent living building proposed along Mission Avenue. And that's shown here in the gray area. There are also improvements to the existing main parking area entry. And as part of phase 1B, there are also some improvements proposed to the outdoor areas along the Fredericksburg wing. Phase 2 is the memory care garden for Rosenborg memory care, and the new service building, which would also facilitate new loading and unloading areas along this driveway here. Phase 3 is concentrated on the west side of the campus. There would be a new independent living building on the west side here, and then there are some partial renovations of some independent living units as part of the Fredericksburg. This is an illustrative master plan that shows the build out of the campus as proposed, along with proposed landscaping. I should note that there are 2 driveways currently. The existing main driveway entry, which is a horseshoe driveway entry, would be reconfigured, but it's almost in exactly the same place. The driveway cuts move inches, so it's pretty much in the same location. To the east, there is an existing driveway that basically it runs right along where my pointer is showing, and it provides access into the parking garage for Rosenborg. As part of the proposed project, the cottage at 308 Mission Avenue would be demolished, and it would provide this additional space for a new driveway and additional parking. So it basically just kind of moves things out and shifts things, the campus further to the east to provide for this access and for this parking. There's also parking that's tucked underneath it's proposed to be tucked underneath the Mission Avenue Independent Living Building. So I'm showing the parking area that's kind of tucked under here. This depicts the elevation, the south elevation, where the Mission Avenue Independent Living Building would be most prominent. And you can see the other existing and proposed buildings in the background. This is an elevation from Bell Avenue, and it shows the West Campus independent living buildings from the Bell Avenue, so the uphill side of the project site off of Bell Avenue. And these are elevations that show more, I guess, what you would call internal elevations of the other buildings that would be renovated or expanded. These are site cross sections. I know it may be difficult to see all the details at this scale, but basically you can see on Bell Avenue on the north side of the campus how the existing Rosenborg building exists here, and there would be the proposed new building along Mission Avenue. This is Mission Avenue, and this represents the property across Mission Avenue, the existing San Rafael Commons, senior project. There are some additional cross sections that basically I included to show the change in difference in the topography from the Bell Avenue frontage down to Mission Avenue. And that was the elevation changes and where they meet up with the existing buildings and the proposed buildings were a key factor in the evolution of the site plan that's being proposed. This is a perspective drawing from Mission Avenue right at the intersection of Mary Street. So you actually see the existing entryway, the horseshoe driveway right in this location, the new independent living building at this location. And this is another perspective view of the independent living building on Mission Avenue. It's from Mary Street. And it shows the driveway entry that provides entry into the Rosenborg parking structure, the new spaces tucked under the Mission Avenue independent living, and then the surface spaces that are on the east side. So getting into the environmental review part, which is the reason we're really here, just a step back in history, back to late last year, a notice of preparation, an NOP, and a draft initial study was prepared and distributed in late November. A scoping meeting was held before the Planning Commission virtually back then to provide an opportunity for comments early on in the process before the draft EIR was prepared. There was the typical 30-day review. We did receive, I believe it was a total of 9 comments during that time. And those comments were taken into consideration when preparing the draft EIR. So the draft EIR analysis is contained in 2 parts of the EIR. I just wanted to point that out. So there's the main body of the EIR. This is just, the draft EIR, And chapter 3 focuses on the significant impacts that were identified early on that were thought to be significant and unavoidable, and that's the cultural resources and historic resources. All of the other topics that are covered under the CEQA checklist, and that covers everything from aesthetics to wildfire in alphabetical order. The other topics are addressed in Appendix B of the draft EIR. And Appendix B is, it's similar to an initial study. The approach was for topics not requiring detailed environmental analysis. We chose to keep it in a checklist format, similar to what you see in an initial study. And that's been done for other projects here in San Rafael, and the CEQA guidelines do allow for that type of format. So Impacts basically in CEQA documents fall into three different categories. There are impacts that are significant, there are impacts that are less than significant when mitigation measures are incorporated. And for this project, there are 6 topics where mitigation measures have been identified and have been drafted that would reduce impacts to less than significant. Air quality, biological resources, geology and soils, noise, cultural resources, except for historic, and tribal cultural resources. And I should mention that all of these impacts are associated with the construction of the project itself versus the operation of the project. So we're talking about air quality impacts that could result from grading operations. Biological resources are limited really to the potential for nesting birds to be in trees that could be disturbed during construction. Geology and soils, that's construction, but I mean, there are some longer lasting issues or topics related to that as well. Noise, again, it was construction impacts that require the mitigation. Operational noise is not an issue. Cultural resources, again, that's when you start digging in the ground. There's always the potential for something to be found. And same goes for tribal cultural resources. The other category are impacts that where there would be no impact, or the impact would be less than significant and would not require any mitigation. And so you see the list of topics here, and I'm not going to list them or go over them verbally, but you see that these topics, they were addressed in Appendix B, and they were determined to be less than significant or have no impact at all. So there are no mitigation measures associated with these topics. Then we get to significant impacts. And early on in the process, back before the notice of preparation was even circulated, we were aware that some of the buildings may have some historic significance. And when there is a lot of information in the CEQA guidelines on this. I brought my trusty handbook here. Historic resources are actually pretty well spelled out in CEQA, unlike some of the other sections. It was pretty clear that we would likely have a significant impact that could not be avoided, because when you demolish something that has historic significance, as we'll get into in these next couple of slides, it's usually difficult, if not impossible, to mitigate the impact. So this is exactly what the conclusion that is drawn in the EIR. The proposed project would result in the demolition of 6 of the 9 contributing buildings and landscape features that are contributing features of an eligible historic district. And this impact was identified as significant and unavoidable. And you might be curious to know, or maybe you already know what a historic district is, but for the benefit of everyone, I put in this slide that explains a little bit about that. So there are historic resources that are just single items, single buildings. But in this case, we're talking about an eligible historic district, which is a concentration of buildings, structures, or objects within precise boundaries that share a common historical, cultural, or architectural background. So there are individual resources within the district that may individually lack significance, but together would be considered a significant contributor to the historic district. And that's the situation that we have on the Aldersley campus. What makes it special and what makes it historically significant is the grouping that you see on the campus. So it's at the Aldersley campus is eligible as a historic district under 2 different criterion that are used by both federal and the state agencies for determining historic significance. The first is criterion 1, which recognizes the Aldersley campus for its history as a unique cultural institution for the Northern California Danish American community. And also under criterion 3, architecture again, this gets back to the eligible historic district, the cohesive collection of Second Bay tradition buildings as envisioned by a 1961 master plan, and then the integration of the landscaping and the built resources, which means, it also reflects the ideals of Aldersley, which means a shade for old age and a comfortable retreat for its residents. So again, as I mentioned earlier, due to the demolition of most of the contributing buildings and just about everything on the campus itself, except for the newer buildings, contributes. There are a couple of exceptions. So you start touching or altering anything on that campus and it's likely to result in an impact on the eligibility of the historic district. So these alterations would cause a significant adverse change. It would result in the loss of California Register eligibility of the Aldersley retirement community as a historic district. And that's important because the CEQA guidelines indicate that if a project would result in changes that would result in the loss of eligibility, that is a significant impact. So it's pretty black and white in terms of the significance and the impact. There's no feasible mitigation, again, that would reduce impacts to less than significant, that would retain enough of the integrity of the resources that it would remain eligible. Because there is no feasible mitigation, the other way of looking at a way to reduce impacts is to look at project alternatives. And CEQA requires that environmental impact reports consider alternatives to the project. And consistent with the guidelines, the approach that was used for preparing this draft EIR and the selection of alternatives was to focus on alternatives that would meet most of the basic objectives of the project while reducing one or more of the significant impacts. And again, the main impact here that cannot be mitigated is the impact on the eligible historic district. And then the second part is to foster informed decision-making and public participation, to provide a range of alternatives that are meaningful and that do foster good decision-making. And then the third, an alternative or alternatives that could feasibly be implemented. So I mentioned project objectives. That's one of the criteria and one of the things to consider when considering what alternatives are appropriate. The project applicant has submitted their project objectives. They're included in the draft EIR, both in the summary and also in reiterated in the alternative section. There are many of them. I will just say that there's an overarching goal to retain and keep Aldersley as a community for older people looking for a home with, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Heich, Danish for the experience of, I'm sorry? Oh, okay, that's much better. Thank you. And the project objectives originating from this overarching goal, they go on. So I'm not going to read them all, but they are, they're a list of objectives that are considered as part of the alternatives analysis. So that's why I'm kind of interjecting them here. And I have a table at the end that kind of summarizes. So that's why I'm not going to go into all of them. But clearly, there are many different objectives to consider, keeping it relevant, keeping it financially feasible, and also to include improvements for the residents to continue to be able to have a positive experience and improve mobility for the residents of Aldersley. Improving the outdoor spaces, providing additional parking, improving the delivery area on the Bells Avenue side, and then maximizing the footprint within the limits of the land use and design controls by the city. There are 3 alternatives addressed in the draft EIR. As required by CEQA, the draft EIR analyzes a no project alternative And that project assumes that the campus would remain in its existing condition, would not be subject to redevelopment other than repairs and interior renovations, that type of thing. This project alternative assumes that there would be no demolition of existing buildings, so the character defining features of the eligible historic district would remain intact. And there would be really no other environmental impacts because there would be no other major development going on. That's the no project alternative. Two other alternatives were looked at, and one is alternative 2. It's the on-site preservation alternative. So again, going back to what the purpose of the alternatives analysis is, it's try to figure out if there are any alternatives that would reduce or minimize significant impacts. This project would concentrate all new development on the campus along its southern edge along Mission Avenue, and would include and propose the construction of 2 new buildings, similar but not the same, and I'll show you the site plan, than what's proposed by the project. Because the scale of the overall construction activities, and again, these impacts are really related to construction activities versus operation. So with this alternative, because the scale of the construction activities would be reduced, all of the impacts that were significant or required mitigation for the proposed project, it would be very similar, if not the same, except for impacts on historic resources. So this alternative 2 would require demolition of 5 of the 9 contributing buildings. So it would be slightly less, but it would also require alteration of a lot of the landscape features, and enough alteration would occur with this proposal or with this alternative that the impact on the eligible historic district would remain significant and unavoidable. So it would be less, but it doesn't get it down to below the threshold of it not being significant. And the other impacts would be less, but would be very similar to what would be required of the proposed project. This is a very conceptual site plan showing the on-site preservation alternative, alternative 2. You can see essentially a building similar to what's being proposed, the Mission Avenue independent living, and then also a 2-level building here on the east side of the, or excuse me, on the west side of the site. So all of the construction would be on the south side. It would affect some people less than the proposed project, but it was all going to be mitigated one way or the other. Then there is another alternative, alternative 3, which we're referring to as the off-site preservation alternative. So alternative 3 would locate all new development on the east side of the Aldersley campus, and it would incorporate 2 parcels that are currently owned by Aldersley on Union Street. They're at 121 and 123 Union Street, kind of right up at the northeast corner of the existing Aldersley campus near its Union and Bell intersection. So this alternative would retain nearly all of the contributing historic buildings and landscape elements that define its historic significance. And the historic district would remain eligible for the California Register under this alternative. So therefore, this alternative would reduce the significant impact to less than significant, because the impacts of and the demolition is reduced so much that it's below the threshold, and the integrity of the historic resources would be maintained so that enough so that it would be able to maintain its eligibility. Other environmental impacts would be similar to the proposed project. Those that could be mitigated could be mitigated with alternative 3. This is a conceptual site plan that shows the alternative 3 development. This area here represents new development that would occur on the 2 residential properties. It is noted that a rezoning would be needed for these two properties to, if this alternative were pursued, to change the zone, the underlying zoning, and to include it as part of a plan development. So CEQA requires that the EIR identify the environmentally superior alternative. Alternative one, the no project alternative, is the environmentally superior alternative in this case, because it would avoid all of the significant impacts associated with the project. The assumption is that the no project alternative would basically keep things pretty much as they currently are. When the no project alternative is identified as the environmentally superior alternative, CEQA guidelines require that you identify the runner-up, the second best. Alternative three, as I mentioned before, it proposes to retain nearly all of the contributing buildings, and it would allow eligibility of the historic district to remain. So alternative three would be the environmentally superior alternative after considering the no project alternative. It gets into a lot of CEQA stuff that is sometimes hard to follow, so I'm happy to answer any questions on that. This is a very busy table, but it essentially, it's included in Chapter 5 of the draft EIR, and it's at a glance a list of the project sponsors' objectives, along with a table that basically indicates the extent to which the alternatives meet the objectives. The next steps for this project are that we will be observing the 45-day public review period until the end of this month. September 30th is the end of the review period. Following the 45-day review period, a written response to the comments received on the draft EIR analysis will be prepared. The draft EIR with any amendments or changes, along with the response to comments document, those two documents combined represent the final EIR, and the final EIR and the project merits, meaning the project applications, will be considered by the Planning Commission and the City Council at future public hearings that will be noticed to the public as this one has. The staff recommendation is to receive public comments on the analysis contained in the draft EIR, and the commissioners may also wish to provide comments on the analysis contained in the draft EIR. Again, no decisions will be made. It's an opportunity for comments tonight, so we'll be listening and writing down whatever we're hearing. And also just to note that, of course, we welcome comments this evening, but we also welcome written comments after tonight's meeting, and they can be sent to via email to my email address here, or provided, submitted actually through US mail and sent to City Hall Community Development. So I'll leave that up, and that concludes staff's presentation. Be happy to answer any questions before we go further. I will just say, if there are questions about the project or simple clarifications, happy to address those, but we will not be trying to answer or respond to specific comments on the draft EIR this evening. Those will be provided in writing, and at a future date, at future meetings, we can have further discussion on that. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Janie.
Janie, would you be so kind to hit hide so people can see the full address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so now we'll move into the period where the Planning Commission asks questions of staff. And just a reminder, this is for questions, and then we'll have a discussion later. So if we could just have questions and answers, and then we'll have a discussion later, that would be great. All right, do we have any questions for Janie or for Leslie? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have some questions for Jeannie. Thank you for putting together such a thorough report. It was really helpful in dissecting what parts of CEQA were really Oh, sorry about that. Back to the project. I have two different subjective questions. One is about a traffic study on Bell. Is that going to be completed prior to the planning application for the project or during the EIR?
There was a traffic study that was prepared. It primarily addressed the main parking areas and driveway areas. It was the amount of trips generated by this project is so low and so well below the threshold. There are no real traffic impacts, I would say, related to traffic volumes of cars that were identified. We're aware that there are concerns about the existing situation on Bell Avenue, but there's no further traffic analysis that is being proposed at this time. We feel that what has been prepared thus far adequately addresses the project as required by CEQA. CEQA impacts on traffic have really, there's been more of a focus lately on that. And we've also changed over to different ways of looking at traffic instead of levels of service, having that
I mean, my question was really geared towards the deliveries. I know there's only like 4 to 5 a week, it looks like, but there'll be like medium-sized box trucks, I'm guessing, that go up and down. And we know that Bell is narrow, so I'm guessing the traffic study included those, the deliveries as well.
Okay, so we did look at that, but it wasn't included in the traffic study. It's really more, it was a combined effort with input from the traffic engineers, but it was really more of a civil engineering exercise in looking at the turning radius. So, maybe it's just the words we're using.
Got it. Yeah.
It has been looked at. It has been addressed. We looked at different, since the notice of preparation and since looking at it more closely, there were additional turning radius and calculations made to ensure that having the proposed loading area would actually work with the size of trucks. And I should note that this is included in the project description, but I didn't cover it in my presentation. The number of truck deliveries would not change.
Yeah. Okay.
It wouldn't change. There are truck deliveries now, the existing condition. As I was mentioning, there are 14 net new additional living units. And many of those folks do their own shopping or whatever. So I did inquire about that with the applicant, just, knowing the sensitivity of Bell Avenue, and there would be no increase in truck deliveries or in the type or size of trucks that would continue to deliver to the campus. So based on that information and really the proposed new driveway and service area and loading area was intended to improve the existing conditions.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah.
So my second question is really about the historic district and the cultural relevance. So we through the report, it notes that the project could potentially lose eligibility for the California Register. So is that something that's applied for by the applicant, or is it how is the California Register historic significance determined, or like what triggers the determination?
Okay, so let me think of the best way to address this. For the CEQA analysis, whether or not a historic resource or a historic district has been registered with the state, whether it has already been through that process or has never been through that process, it is treated as an eligible historic resource. So typically it would be I think actually other people can actually request, that it be considered for the register, but that almost really doesn't come into play. I mean, the city could
Yeah.
take action on that if they chose to, but typically it would be from the CEQA standpoint, it's almost irrelevant as to whether it's actually on the register or not.
Yeah, well, I guess my question's leading to whether or not like the if it's eligible for any Department of Interior, like historic district, because there's tax credits that are involved. So,
Right.
what I'm going back to is like one of the objectives of the project, which is financial viability. So if if the site is deemed to be on the historic register in California or in the federal, through the Department of Interior, then there could be an argument for leaving those buildings remaining, knowing that Elderslie would be able to, get, have financial assistance to be able to make it economically viable.
I see where you're going with this. Again, I guess I'm just thinking about from the CEQA analysis standpoint, the eligibility, whether it's registered or not. But I see as you look at the alternatives and the larger picture, that's something that we can provide some more information on at a future date.
I think that would be great. I think it's important when we look at the project as a whole, to be able to know what the financial impacts are for the applicant. That's all I have for questions.
Great, thank you. Any more questions? Yep. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I had a question which also came up from a nearby neighbor, just in regards to minimizing some of the noise in the area, especially given there's a daycare across the street. Just wondering kind of what you're doing to address that potential obstruction. And then my other question was just in regards to option 3, the alternative option that would maintain the historic district eligibility. I'd love to know how many additional living units that allows for, as well as beds. Apologies if I missed that detail in the presentation.
Okay. I'll have to check on the number of units. I believe it's very similar to the number of units that are proposed as part of the project, but I'll have to double check on that. And the first part of your question was about the noise impacts along Bell Avenue?
Yes, along, with phase 2 in particular.
Right. Well, during any construction, throughout the city, not just for this project, but throughout the city, construction hours are limited to try to avoid the more noise sensitive times. There are maximum levels that are the ceiling for construction noise. When it goes beyond the property line, it cannot exceed what's in our noise ordinance. And so all of that would remain in effect to control for construction noise. That is essentially the biggest, most effective way to mitigate construction noise. It doesn't mean that you won't hear construction noise, but it does mean that the thresholds that we use for evaluating significant impacts, it would be reduced to less than significant. And again, there are other controls that are identified. I don't know if I have it here. There are mitigation measures that are identified in the draft EIR that address the noise impacts and the mitigation measures. It's probably most easily identified in the summary table. Page 85. Yeah. Oh, I don't seem to have that. There we go. So yeah, the construction noise mitigation measure, it identifies items, A through K, that would require everything from installation of a temporary noise barrier during construction, and limitation on when equipment can be, the startup of equipment, mufflered, maintaining all of the construction equipment in good condition, the location of any stationary equipment on the site. These are very standard and routine mitigation measures that we pretty much apply to, most infill development where there's, residential and other noise sensitive land uses around. So there isn't anything extraordinary about the noise construction that we expect, but there are ways that we intend to, make sure it's mitigated to an acceptable level.
Great, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'll try to be quick. I have basically 4 questions. The first 2 are sort of procedural in nature. The first one is, will the design review board have an opportunity to comment on CEQA, considering all the impact to historic preservation and all that?
That is typically not part of the process, and I'm not sure that it's within the purview of the design review board. Leslie, I'm looking
Yeah,
over at
the
you.
answer is no.
Okay. All right, thanks. And then I guess kind of a similar question. Is it within the scope of the CEQA to ensure that the plan is consistent with the downtown precise plan? I know you mentioned it, and also are those buildings listed as historical in the downtown precise plan?
It is not within the downtown's precise plan boundaries.
Okay.
It's just north.
I see. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there are districts in the downtown precise plan, but this property is outside the precise plan district.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And do you happen to know, you mentioned the Second Bay tradition. Could you elaborate on that? Do you know any details of that? Is that connected to like mid-century modern design, like Civic Center or the Eichler neighborhoods, or?
Well, I encourage everyone to read the cultural resources report prepared by Page and Turnbull. It's Appendix C. It's probably one of the most interesting parts of our work, because it includes history not only about the Aldersley campus, but about the city of San Rafael and how it evolved. So it's definitely the most interesting part, and it's always the most fun part for me. So I guess what I kind of lost what you were.
Maybe just a quick.
The Bay Area tradition. Yeah.
Yeah, Second Bay.
Yeah, Second Bay tradition. So the architect that prepared the master plan back in the 60s, Whitaker was the last name, I believe. There's a pretty detailed discussion about the architect, the master plan, and why it's special. I mean, why should we care if these buildings are demolished? I think that's kind of the core of what people really are curious about. And the Bay tradition, from what I remember in the report, it is linked to the mid-century modern. I mean, it represents a type of mid-century modern architecture, but it's and I'm not an architectural historian, so I'm kind of ad-libbing this based on my recollection, but it really was the Aldersley project, or the campus, was considered a good example of that tradition, because I mean, there's certain angles and the roof lines similar to Eichler's and mid-century modern, but probably different from a real architectural standpoint, that where many of them just don't exist very much anymore. And this architect, I mean, he was known specifically for healthcare buildings. And so I think one of what I gathered from the Page and Turnbull historic analysis is that one of the reasons why this is considered eligible is because there aren't that many left. that are all under one ownership. And it gives examples. There are some in San Francisco and in other parts of Northern and Southern California that continue to be examples of the Bay Area tradition. And there's certainly a lot of residential, individually owned homes that are still around that reflect that type of architecture. But in this case, because it's a campus with all of the buildings under one cohesive ownership, that is what part of the reason why it was intended or identified as being special and eligible as a district. I don't think that answered your question too well,
I
but
think I got a good sense of.
but I
what
could
that meant.
certainly pull out the cultural report and elaborate more on the second Bay tradition if you'd like.
No, that's fine. I think I got a good sense of it. Thank you. And then my last question was just around the neighbors. So I know that there were some interviews or some input from neighbors. Is that correct? And as part of the CEQA, did you mention neighbors' perspectives? Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, we've had discussions with the neighbors. We received comments both during the scoping meeting and
Yeah.
also in writing, where we became aware of what neighbors in the area were most concerned about.
What's their general perspective on the project? Do they want to see a new building there like what's proposed?
I can comment on what's been submitted and in terms of what's been submitted in writing and what's been mentioned at hearings. I think construction impacts, I will just say, kind of rank number one.
Yeah.
With the concerns and the existing conditions on Bell Avenue being what they are, making sure that there isn't going to be any issues with blocking emergency vehicles, things like that. Parking is a neighborhood issue, but it's not a CEQA issue.
Got it. Yeah.
But it's an issue. It's a concern.
I guess just to sort of rephrase the question, are people generally in favor of the project, or are they kind of up in arms against the project, or are they more neutral?
It would be difficult to answer that
Okay.
because mostly what we hear is what the concerns are.
Details.
Because that's why people want to comment. It's
Yeah.
I sense that neighbors want to be good neighbors, and but as to whether or not they are really in favor of the project, I don't think anybody looks forward to having construction
Right.
going on next door to them, unfortunately. So
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, great. And any questions? Any more questions? Okay, no. Okay, thanks. All right. So now let's open this up to the public hearing. Leslie, would you open the public hearing, please?
Yes, and will that be 3 minutes per speaker?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
so first of all, if there's anyone in the chamber who wishes to speak on this item, and if you are attending virtually, use the raise the hand icon, and if you're phoning, please press *9. So no one in the chamber. So our first speaker is, oh, we do. Excuse me. Do you want to come up to the? Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you. Thank you to the commissioners, and thank you to you for your excellent presentation. My name is Gilda Selkow. First name is Italian, last name is Danish. I am second generation American. My father was first generation American, and my grandparents were Danish. I attended the preliminary meetings via Zoom that were offered on this topic. And I just want to say a few things. I have a great love of Aldersley. My Italian mother spent her last 7 years at Aldersley. It's a wonderful place for elders to spend their last years. One concerns, which I think I need to address the people at Aldersley, is the noise disruption and displacement of current new residents. And one question that I have for Jane, I think is her name. is that I think can be addressed. It's how can the impacts be mitigated to make them insignificant? So I need to read the paper, the draft of the DIR that you referred to, and maybe that'll answer that. And I may write some written questions as well. And basically I ask, and I've heard from the panel here, that you take into consideration in your decisions that will allow Aldersley to continue the hygge, I'm not sure I pronounce it correctly because I don't speak Danish, that makes it a special place, that it continues to be a special place to spend one's older years. It is a very special place, and whether buildings are changed or not, it does have historical significance. My mother lived to almost 100 years old, which is the age of Aldersley. My Danish grandparents helped in creating Aldersley. And I think that's basically what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the chambers wishing to speak? No, so the first, next speaker is I think I promoted you already. Crayside?
CC Rayside.
Crayside, are you there? Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear
You
me?
have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that
So we're
providing
having the same issue with the audio.
Well,
for me.
Would
Hello.
the speaker please pause for a moment? I wonder if it's because we turned off the computer's audio earlier on.
with that one? You know, the- Can you try now? Oh,
Hello, this is CC Rayside. Can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I appreciate that you're providing some facilities for the elders. And it's actually pronounced Hugh, I believe. I just got back from that area, and it's a wonderful, cozy feeling. So I really appreciate that you're providing that for our neighborhood. I'm directly affected because I'm right on the intersection of Bell and Ridge. And one of my primary concerns is about parking, because we already have a huge issue with people, especially the staff, being able to park. And I'm looking at, you were increasing the parking by 8, but increasing the number of independent living units by 14. So that will be, I imagine an increase in staff, as well as independent living people are going to have their own cars, I would imagine, as well as visitors. So I'm concerned about parking because people are already parking all the way. That's why Bell is so narrow, because the staff is parking on Bell and they're parking on Ridge and they're turning around in my driveway. And it's really a big issue for us. So, you mentioned something, it's an issue, but not a significant issue. It is for those of us who live in the area. So I just wanted to go on record for that, because parking is a major issue. And I don't see that you're
Thank you.
providing sufficient amount for your staff.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see Janie taking notes.
Okay, thanks.
Right, the next speaker is Laura Thiel. Laura, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks for having this meeting. And my name is Laura Thiel, and I live at 304 Mission Avenue, which is right next to the house that's going to be demolished. So because of COVID, I'm now working at home. And the house that's being demolished is less than 10 feet away from my home office. So I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. Um, headphones, I don't know. So there's that. And in my backyard, there will be a big building in my patio. So it's so there's that as well. And I don't, I don't know. The noise of construction, to live through the noise of that for a year being in a home office is going to be intense. It's going to be intense to not have a house next to me and have even though they're going to put in a fence and a berm of green, green space, which is great. But I just got the plans today, so I haven't really had a chance to look at them. But they just put, 20 years ago, they put the big building, the memory center, above my backyard. And so people can look into my backyard. And now there's going to be another building that's going to look in my backyard. And, I'll sit on my patio, and instead of looking at the sky, I'm going to be looking at a building. So it's been a pretty much distressing experience for me. I mean, I put a lot of money in renovating my house, and I have a great garden, and Aldersley did give me a land use agreement for 13 feet to extend my backyard back in 2002, I think is when the last building went up. So, the noise is definitely an issue to live through the construction, because I'm not in an office anymore. I'm at home. Anyway, my time's running out. I just thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Chris Y.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So my name is Chris Yatrakis. I'm a 12-year homeowner and resident on 117 Union Street. So my property adjoins Aldersley along the Rosenborg building. I'm 2 houses down from Mrs. Thiel. I'm also a member of the MARA board, the Montecito Area Residents Association, and I've been a board member for 5 years. I think I'm probably the only board member who's here. Overall, I support Aldersley, and I support the construction. Of course, nobody likes construction noise. And in my backyard is the Rosenborg building, which is a massive building, frankly, right? The question that I have, and the reality with the noise, we want Aldersley strong and financially viable and a healthy and nice place for people to live. And the construction is going to impact the residents probably more than it will make. These people live on site there. So it's going to be very difficult for everybody. The question that I have is more directed at a city level. And as San Rafael moves from suburban to more urban, what is the city doing from a standards perspective around building height and mass? The building height and mass of the new construction, significant construction, is going to carry the same roof line as Rosenborg, which is 3 stories, and it's going to continue out towards the street. So it's quite a significant building. From my backyard, I will no longer be able to see Mount Tam. That's fine. That's life. But it's a big building, and there's going to be a lot more big buildings coming up. There's the one on 3rd and Grand. And what we want to see from a MARA perspective is a consistent treatment of, from the city level to these developments that are going to happen, because today it's my backyard, tomorrow it's going to be somebody else's backyard. So the specific question is, what is the city doing from a zoning and communications perspective as it relates to new building height and mass? One of the neighbors who's right next door to Mrs. Thiel, who's more impacted than me, had requested that Aldersley put up some story poles. And story poles are a visual way to suggest the size and mass of the construction. They're not required to do that by current zoning requirements that the city has in place. We're going to have more big buildings coming in, like the one over on 3rd and Grand. I think it's going to be pretty big. We probably need a way to communicate to residents about the size of these new structures that are coming in so that people can understand the size and mass of them before cement gets thrown. And the way it is today, it's just the planning's done on paper and there's no way to understand how the paper translates to the physical location. So that's it's something that we're going to send in writing. I just wanted to give a heads up on it today verbally as well. So thank you very much for the presentation, Danny. It's excellent. And thank you, members of the board.
Thank you.
If anyone else wishes to speak, please use the raise the hand icon or *9 if you're phoning in. Laura is raising her hand, but she's spoken. Anyone else? Give you all one more second. I feel like I'm the woman behind the curtain here. This is no one else wishes to speak, and I'm gonna turn that off again.
Okay, thank you. Testing. Okay, great, thanks. All right, so I will officially close the public hearing now and move on to any sort of comments from the commissioners. So I just in order to ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak, we'll go through a normal calling of each commissioner's name. So we'll start with Commissioner Harris. Do you have any comments?
None at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Haveman?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Mercado is absent. Commissioner Samitsi?
I'm within the 1 mile radius of the building, so I recuse myself.
Thanks for letting us know. Commissioner Schock?
One thing that did come to mind more after hearing on parking, some of the points on parking was just some additional concerns in terms of, is that being, is there ample parking for the residents and for the staff and whatnot? So I think that's the only point that I wanted to, I guess, additionally stress is looking into that further. But yeah, no further comments other than that.
Okay, great, thank you. Vice Chair Saudi?
Yeah, I just have a couple things. After reading the draft EIR and hearing the presentation tonight, I think the presentation tonight further reinforced my concerns about really the cultural resource that Aldersley is. With, when it was, I know the original buildings are not there, but when this building was designed and built by Rex Whitaker Allen, it's representing one of the few second bay transition buildings, as you discussed. A lot of them are not non-residential, so most of these resources are residential. So having this site intact along with the landscape, I think, is what brings character and a sense of place to Aldersley. I double checked the numbers, and it looks like with alternative 3, the number of units remain the same, although the parking is problematic. We know that parking is an issue on all projects, and I'm hoping that we can further study how that's being addressed. I'm usually really in favor of going ahead and really making sure that the owner has economic viability. So I'm really struggling with my stance on it, but I do think this site in particular really contributes to the richness of the fabric of that area, as well as San Rafael. And I think it would be a detriment really culturally. I think that one resource, I could see all the other ones we can make work, they're mitigation measures. But this one, that one point is, I think, impactful, especially because the new design really doesn't address any of the existing vernacular, nor does it try to maintain the richness of design and detailing that the original structures had. So that's my take on it. Hopefully we can talk about this further. And I'd like to have a project that works for both Aldersley and for the city. And, I have kids in this, I have 2 small kids. I'd love for them to be able to walk around San Rafael and see the city through time. Not that we're a time capsule, but I think this one site in particular, it has special meaning.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the building should be preserved. I drove by there earlier today, drove around the block a few times and went into that horseshoe driveway. And those are truly beautiful buildings. And they do have a special character that is, in my opinion, consistent with things like the Marin County Civic Center, which was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, as people know, and also the Eichlers. I think it would be a shame to see those buildings torn down. I have to say that is it the Rosenberg building? That's the new building. That building is very large relative to the rest of the structures there. I was actually very surprised to see it. Surprised to see that it was approved when it was in whenever 2002 or whatnot. So I agree with the speaker that from the public who, wondered about, how we're regulating height and mass. It seems like, to me, that building, Rosenberg, was a miss, and it is too large for the neighborhood. So I think the height and mass is also a very important consideration. We don't want to, block out, not just people's views, but block out people's ability to experience ample space, sky space, adjacent to their homes and really change the character of the neighborhood by allowing buildings that are much larger. Those are my comments. Okay, great. All right. Does anyone else have any other further comments? Any more? Okay, great. There is no vote on this, so we will move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much, Janie. Really appreciate all your work.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. All right. So the next item on the agenda is there are text amendments for streeteries. This is streeteries like eateries, is that right? Ordinance. All right. So, specifically, there are text amendments to zoning ordinance and downtown precise plan to conform with the proposed adoption of an ordinance of the City of San Rafael, adding Chapter 11.70 Streeteries Outdoor Eating Areas to Title 11 Public Works of the San Rafael Municipal Code. This sounds very exciting to me.
It's very
like
exciting.
to eat.
And I shortened
and I like to eat on the street.
Yeah, I shortened the title for you.
All right. Can we receive a presentation from staff? Jane, are you going to do this one too? Oh, no.
No,
okay.
it's me.
Leslie, great.
So
Thank
hopefully
you.
this will work well. So good evening. I'm Leslie Mendez. I'm the planning manager, and I'm also a member of the multi-departmental team that was tasked to prepare guidelines and a draft ordinance for a permanent streetery program for the city. I can do this there. What is a streetery, you may ask? Well, it is, at times it's been formerly known as a parklet. And streeteries are on-street outdoor dining areas in a space that was previously used for vehicle parking. A little background on on-street dining in San Rafael. Outdoor dining by the city on city sidewalks and in the public way was authorized by the City Council in April of 2000 through adoption of an ordinance which allowed the Community Development Director to license outdoor dining in the rights of way subject to certain conditions and performance standards, which are codified in the zoning ordinance. In August of 2015, the City Council established a 3-year pilot program to expand the outdoor dining program to include parklets in the streets, which provided a process for businesses to use parking spaces for outdoor dining purposes. The program was extended in December of 2018, and a total of 3 businesses applied and received approval to operate outdoor dining parklets. To help local businesses during the COVID-19 emergency, in June of 2020, the City Council authorized a streamlined approval process for use of city sidewalks and on-street parking spaces for business activities. 29 merchants took advantage of the program. The temporary outdoor dining program permits approved under the COVID-19 emergency will expire at the end of November of this year. And due to the popularity and the benefits of outdoor dining that the city has enjoyed, staff were tasked to create a continuance of the outdoor dining program to start at the beginning of December of this year. On June 21st of this year, staff presented the draft Streetery program guidelines to City Council, setting forth staff's recommendations for design and development standards, operational standards, fees, and other related requirements for new streetery encroachment permits that would apply after permits expire. And to be clear, the Streetery, the new ordinance that is going to be considered on Monday, next Monday at City Council, will be located in Title 11, which is Public Works, and streeteries are in the public right of way. And the new chapter 11.70 would govern streeteries through encroachment permits issued by the Director of Public Works. So although the Streetery ordinance does not fall under the purview of the Planning Commission, adoption of the ordinance does require minor conforming text amendments to the zoning ordinance and to the downtown precise plan. And these text amendments do require your recommendation to City Council. The text amendments would direct use of eating areas in the street that are currently referenced in both the zoning ordinance and the downtown precise plan to the new Streetery ordinance, again, chapter 11.70, and includes the sections listed on this slide. Actual text amendments can be found in strikeout and underline form in attachment B of the Planning Commission resolution, and you will see they consistently strike out anything that has to do with on-street dining within the zoning ordinance to refer to the new Streetery ordinance in chapter 11.70. So if you want more information on the actual Streetery program and guidelines, I encourage you to attend council on Monday. It will be very exciting and we look forward to your participation. But for tonight, I recommend that you adopt the resolution that recommends the Planning Commission adopt the resolution recommending the City Council adopt the proposed Streetery ordinance, adding chapter 11.70, Streeteries outdoor eating areas to the San Rafael Municipal Code, and amending relevant sections of the zoning ordinance and downtown precise plan relating to on-street eating areas. That is the conclusion of my presentation, but I am here to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Leslie. Does anyone have any commissioners have any questions?
I have a couple questions.
After you.
Thank you, Leslie, for your presentation. I have a couple questions regarding points on the ordinance. One is probably easier to answer than the other, so I'll start with that. So I enjoy eating on parklets or streeteries, and I think they're a nice amenity to have and add a lot of vibrancy to our downtown. But there are some that are designed more permanently than others, and that seem to add to the fabric of the downtown and some that detract. So I see in 1170.070, we talk about there's talk of design and development standards. Can you elaborate on what that means and if there's some sort of process that the commission that you're on or the group that you're on is exploring to address that?
Yes, so we have put together draft guidelines that have been already reviewed by the City Council and approved, and they do address things, everything from pretty much safety to fees to like all the details that do as well include aesthetics. And those are available on, there is a City Streetery webpage where they are available for review. So we were very cognizant of wanting it to be an aesthetic addition to the community, as well as be safe for those eating and those, still using the right of way for other areas, as well as being accessible, to folks with disabilities. So to really include all those as best we could in design guidelines, in other standards in terms of safety. So they have been prepared and they are available for your review.
Thank you. I'll take a look at them. My second question is regarding, I guess when I look at the chapter 11, it talks about like individual streeteries, but how is the number, like the total number on certain streets and where they're allowed, how is that going to be determined?
So I'm going to plead a little embarrassment. I do know that I don't know the details by heart, so I don't have this and I can get back to you, but there is a certain spacing that is required, and streeteries are only allowed in parking spaces that are immediately in front abutting your space. So it could be 2 spaces. It also is restricted to, now this is also where I plead a little ignorance, to streets that have a speed limit under a certain, there's a speed limit, so it's not on, it'll be focused in the downtown and other kind of lower speed areas, but those are regulated and I don't have the details that I can share.
I can take a look at that. Thank you. I just wanted, I'm sure there was something around it. I just wanted to know if that was the case.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead.
I of course, I need to take a look at it too. So, but just curious, as far as the design guidelines too, if that also accounts for cyclists, for, just ensuring, sometimes I enjoy biking quite a bit and some of the parklets come out and I enjoy eating on the street too. So I'm very much in support of it, but just making sure that there's ample space for cars and for bikes, which I'm sure is addressed in this and I need to read this, but that is something that's been a concern of mine when it comes to safety.
Yes. So we did look at safety for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for cars. But again, I do encourage you to read the guidelines that we did put together and do comment to City Council on Monday.
Cool.
Because having direct experience is more helpful than, we try to think of everything, but sometimes we miss things. So yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Just one question for me. Do you think that the existing inspectors or the staff who are going to do the inspections, that they'll be able to handle the extra load?
Yes. And we had who's going to do the inspections? And so streeteries will, so the answer is yes, and it will be a joint between, maybe not building inspectors, but many of those streeteries will require building permits. So that will be done in-house. The aesthetic design review will also, when I say in-house, I mean community development. I shouldn't say that, we're all sort of in-house. Community development will look at make sure that it's consistent with the design guidelines. And Public Works will be issuing the encroachments, and Fire and has offered to do the inspections along with Public Works. So it really is a joint city program.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So without, please go ahead.
One more question.
Yeah.
Are the existing streeteries going to be grandfathered in? Or are they going to be required to meet the new standards?
I believe the 3 that actually received official permits are the ones that are grandfathered in. The other ones will need to meet our current standards. Anyone that in some of the standards won't be grandfathered in, they all will need to be meet the safety standards and the accessibility standards. But some of the design elements that some of them have already invested, money in and received building permits, they will be the ones that are grandfathered in. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harris
Yeah,
has
please.
an additional question. So I'm just looking in the operational standards, specifically the alcohol service and the noise and disruptive behavior sections. I'm just wondering what, has there been any thought given to if there's going to be like a certain number of strikes a permit holder has, if they get a certain number of noise complaints? Is there any consideration to potential additional littering if someone's out with an alcoholic beverage? Are the alcoholic beverages going to be in glassware? Like what kinds of standards are there?
Those are really great questions. I'm not sure I have the answers to all of them. And in terms of the glassware and everything, personally, I really like drinking a beverage out of glass. I really get annoyed when you get like one of those red cups for your wine. You're really, so I don't know that, and I know that we weren't so specific on like a definitive number of like, 3 strikes you're out. We do have clauses in there like sprinkled throughout of these can be revisited and revoked if you're not a good, this isn't the terms that's used in the ordinance but or the guidelines, but if you're not a good player, it is the city's property, it is the city's so this is a benefit for the city but also for the business. So we do expect them to be good players, but we haven't listed definitively or specifically like 1, 2, or 3, but yeah. So code enforcement is part of the team that was involved in the guidelines as well. So and police.
Okay, excellent. All right, so let's open it up to a public hearing. The public hearing.
Yep. If anyone wants to speak in the chambers, please just step right up on Streeteries. And while he's coming up, if anyone who is still participating via Zoom, please use the raise the hand icon or *9. Yes, thank you.
Hi there. Not done this before, so I'm not really sure the process, but it looks like I just kind of let you know some of my concerns and questions. And so the first one was, so I'm Ryan Spencer, the owner of Libation Taproom Bottle Shop on B Street. We were one of the 3 businesses that was granted a permit prior to 2020 and built out worked hard to build. We've got an old 1896 building, worked hard to make essentially a porch that extended off of that building to go with the aesthetics of what we had built out with everything else at a significant expense. So a couple questions and concerns that I had was kind of what's getting grandfathered in. There's some significant fees kind of associated with the planning here. One being a new application. It sounds as though we might not have to reapply for, we've already gone through the planning and building permitting and approval process prior to building. So hopefully there aren't new things that we have to apply for. Some specific concerns there, the streetery buffers. When initially applying, I wanted to put in parking blocks and was told I was not allowed to. So my parklet essentially goes from property line to property line. And we were required to put in essentially like large steel planters to several hundred-pound planters that would help impede any kind of barrier if something was hit, as well as keep our patrons on the sidewalk side of the streetery. So if we're now required to put these parking blocks in, that's going to encroach on other people's property lines. What's going to be the plan for that? It would be a significant hardship to try to rebuild my parklet to account for those blocks. Let's see, I'm trying to gather my notes here and make it all kind of make sense. I guess in terms of like other concerns on fees, the $2,000 deposit to ensure maintenance. Right now, I spend a significant amount of money cleaning up human excrement, trash, needles, everything else that the people that are living on the street decide to bestow me with over the evening hours. That I'm not getting any help with the city on keeping these people off of my parklet in the evening, let alone the cleanup of it. Additionally, I was required to put a bond up for any potential removal if my business went under or I left, and I did not do so. I'm kind of asking in some leeway of, because none of us are really doing that great, and this is going to be a financial hardship. So that bond, essentially, if you kind of are coming to me saying that I'm not keeping up with the cleanliness, the next step on that end, I would imagine, being taking the parklet, which you have a bond for. Hoping there might be some exemption for that. Running out of time. The annual rental fee was never part of the discussion in the initial application and approval process that we were given. It would have been something that would have needed to be thought about and incurred before the $36,000 we spent building this parklet. Last couple of things, because we're losing, I don't know what the speed limit is on B, but I'm guessing it's more than 25 miles an hour. And if we are going to be subject to this, I'm curious if the businesses with bulbs are also going to be subject to these same regulations.
Apologies, what was that last sentence you said?
If we are going to be those three businesses that we were approved prior, if we're going to be subject to these kind of some of these new regulations under this requirements, are the businesses with the bulbs that essentially are also taking over parking spaces downtown, are they also going to be required to meet some of these same fees and requirements?
The bulbs, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if there's anyone participating via Zoom wishing to speak, please use the raise the hand icon. We have one speaker, so let me do my magic here. Le Comter, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. So we are near the local town on 4th and C, not far from Libation. The first question I have is, I've been asked to be part of a meeting over a year ago, as far as the parklet, the streeteries, whatever you want to call that right now. And all the restaurant owners that were there, whether on Zoom or on site, had requested to have an answer by December so we can prepare financially. As my lovely gentleman who just was speaking before me, like, to prevent, we have a hard situation financially, and it takes time to actually build things and get it secure. It took over a year to get voted, I guess, and now we do have, yes, those charges that are absolutely ridiculous. If you want to have your downtown San Rafael working, you had to support small businesses, and taking a year to get voted in, I don't think is the right thing. The second thing I would say is that when we are outside in our businesses and we do have to clean up after the mess, we do have to clean up the syringes, we do have to clean up the people crapping in front of our businesses. Nobody gives a shit about it, quite frankly. When we are trying to keep downtown San Rafael alive and our business alive, we need a little bit of support. Why is it that none of the restaurants were invited into a conversation in order to, what can we do to help each other? It is absolutely strange that the fact we decided, when I say we, is whoever is on your board decided to make decision for us, $7,000 a year to put two Streetery outside. We were approved in 2000, and then we were told that, you know what, it was under review. And now we're here in 2022 after 2.5 years of very difficult time. And I am one of those people that actually go back and forth to all businesses and support everybody, because we all need to support each other. And I find it very strange that people are making decisions without getting to us, asking us. We're restaurant owners. We create jobs. We create a lot of things in the city. So why are we not asked directly? And why is it that when we are asked, it takes a year to get an answer? And now it's like 9 p.m. I had to take the night off from my business, who was dying, in order to be here. And it took an hour and a half to have a talk about the Streetery.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. My apologies for being abrupt, but it is very complicated for us business owners, restaurant owners in this difficult time.
Thank you. Yeah, no reason to apologize. And I thank you for your patience. I know this has been a long meeting, and your comments are very much appreciated.
If there's anyone else wishing to speak, please use the raise the hand icon. I don't see anyone, so let me.
Okay, great. I'm going to close the public hearing. And at this point, we will move to comments by the commissioners. And again, we'll go through each commissioner in order, starting with Commissioner Harris.
No additional comments at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Haveman.
Also no comments.
Commissioner Mercado is absent. Commissioner Samitsi.
I appreciate the comments that were made by the business owners. I think we do need to be considerate of what the costs are. I think the state of downtown in general, I mean, the fact that we have Starbucks leaving downtown is kind of indicative of sort of a bigger picture. I think the Streeteries are a good idea in terms of the vibe that they can attract downtown. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think we're going to be able to answer it right now. I also understand that the city itself doesn't really have a surplus to work with. That's something, I think that's a math problem that I think would require some iterations to kind of come together on, to kind of figure out what works for everybody there. Because I think that there's something in this that's a win-win for everybody, but we just aren't quite there yet.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw.
I just second what Commissioner Samitsi just said, and that I'm hopeful we can find a balance there, just to lessen the burden on the restaurant owners. So yeah, I think the vision, like the idea is great, but yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Sadi.
Yeah, I'm going to second what Vice Chair Samitsi said. I also want to add that we need to have like some sort of parameters around these Streeteries. I think I applaud businesses like Libation and other businesses who are doing their best to keep San Rafael, like keep their businesses alive, but keep the fabric of downtown going when there's so many vacancies and it's almost impossible to, almost give away the space. I think there's a real beautification issue downtown, and I don't know if it's correlated, but I don't think it's solved through the Streetery program. I think the city of San Rafael can look at ways of creating a beautification program that would help ease the burden financially of the businesses that are there. So if there are financial impacts, in terms of permitting and such, I think that can be addressed, but also just the overall cost of maintaining them or providing additional support with the street team or through Public Works to help with, making sure that the streets are clean and that they're really creating an atmosphere of viability for the business owners. So it's a tough, I agree, it's not going to be solved tonight. But I think there's like a way for the city to like look and meet in the middle a little bit more and help these businesses out before they have to shut their doors, because we already kind of have that problem right now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Leslie, is it right that the rental fee is $7,000 a year?
Again, I don't have the details in front of me. I know there is a pretty extremely discounted rate for the first year, and I think through year 3. And I think that if, city council would look at that again, if the recession were to, if it's going to stay like this or, worsen in any way. So, and if I can just say one more thing is I appreciate you coming, and as well as the speaker on the through Zoom. And I do want to highly encourage you to come to, I know it's more time, but to participate in Monday's meeting at City Council. Also feel free to reach out to me directly and I can get you in touch with members of the team and share some of the information. So part of the reason I don't have more details in front of you is that your purview is very limited here tonight. You are not looking at the guidelines or the fees or the aesthetics or the safety concerns. It is really the text amendments to the zoning ordinance and footnote 17 of the downtown precise plan use table that refers to outdoor dining, so that there is a reference to the new ordinance that council is considering. So again, that doesn't in any way diminish your comments, which I think are very well taken. And that comes for the commissioners as well as the members of the public. But I just want to make sure that we're clear that our purview today is a tiny little footnote.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
And just to sort of round that out. So I remember this gentleman was asking about some, being grandfathered in with some permits and fees and whatnot. What's the best way for him to get those answers?
Immediately, I will give you my contact information, then I can follow up with you tomorrow and get you in touch with Victoria Lim in Economic Development and the folks who are in Public Works who have more of the details. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And that goes to members who are listening in as well. You can contact me at Leslie, Leslie, Mendez, Mendez. Actually, it's Leslie.Mendez at cityofsanrafael.org. And I'm on the planning webpage. So please do contact me for further information.
Okay, great. John, you have a comment?
I do. First, thank you, Commissioner Smoothie. Oops. Thank you, Commissioner Smoothie. Very well said. And Leslie, I also wanted to ask about the process. We heard from the speakers that they didn't feel like they had a voice. Was the chamber represented in the process, or was this solely within the city government?
So we definitely reached out to the Chamber of Commerce. And when I say we, I will say that the spearhead was economic development. And I'm if we did not reach out to the businesses, I do think that was a missed opportunity on our part. So that's another reason that I think it would be super valuable for you to attend on Monday. So that should have been part of the process. And I think there was some contact with some of the businesses, but I don't know the extent.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I saw you raise your hand, but I'm sorry, but the public hearing is closed. But if you could talk to Leslie afterwards or me afterwards, happy to speak with you. Okay, yeah, we're almost done. All right, so if there are no more comments, then I would entertain a motion in a second to approve.
So moved, Commissioner Smoothie.
Commissioner Haveman, I'll second.
Okay, any additional discussion? No? Okay, great. Leslie, would you mind taking a roll call?
Yes, moved by Commissioner Smoothie, Seconded by Commissioner Hayman. For the vote, Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hayman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercado's absent, Commissioner Samuzzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Schock,
Yes.
Vice Chair Saudi,
Yes.
and Chair Prabhatali.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so next we'll move on to the director's report. Leslie?
Yes, let me get my notes. So to reiterate, my first item is that the first reading of the Streetery ordinance will be heard by council on Monday. So I will be creating a really quick report based on a summary of this meeting to add into the staff report that's going to council. So that will be presented, and I, again, encourage you all your participation. And if you're unable to participate in person, provide your written comments, because I do know that it is difficult, especially for those who are operating dining establishments. This is when you have hours of operation. Second, we will not have a planning commission meeting in September 27th. So enjoy the night, eat at a streetery. I don't know, have a, yeah.
Great.
This just, I mentioned the study session on Northgate, and that has been postponed. There's been delays in receiving some of the technical reports, and we really want to get a little more information presented before we come to a study session. So I don't even want to say a date, but we're looking October, November. Similarly, at the end of October or early November, the housing element will be coming to you. So that will be coming up, and that will be the draft housing element for your review and recommendation to City Council. So that's super exciting. And you will all read it. Yes, so that's exciting. And the other thing is that the city is going, I just want to inform you that the city is undergoing a master fee schedule update. So we have, and that is a citywide update of all our fees. We contracted with a consultant who gave us recommended fees, to be cost recovery. We are having presentations with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Downtown Business Association, with developers, with contractors, and we will be moving forward with, taking into consideration some of the comments we're receiving with some of our own comments and what we feel is, what should be doing. And so that will be not coming to you all, but just it's tangentially related to the work we all do in CDD and throughout the city. So I just wanted to let you know. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Now we'll move on to Commission and Communication. Are there any Planning Commission members who have any communications or any additional comments? I just have a quick one. I'm going to make this as quick as possible. So as we heard at the very beginning of the meeting from Grace Garrity, there have been some changes to the laws that govern the Planning Commission. And I'm just wondering if the commissioners would be interested in getting a staff report on that would be basically a summary of those changes for us to, consider and potentially comment on, particularly for any changes that have yet to be voted on for City Council. You think so? Okay.
So apologies, summary of the changes to
Summary of the recent changes to the Planning Commission laws that govern the Planning Commission.
Okay, yes.
As related to Grace Garrity's comment, and
Yes.
also any forthcoming proposed changes.
Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, with that.
Could I
yes.
apologize,
Yeah.
Since Vice Chair Howdy, was unable to go to the design review and we didn't have a volunteer or available volunteer, which I understand. I apologize for not doing it in my report. I did want to say that the objective standards that went before the design review board last week, and the objective design standards are for residential projects. I believe it's over 4 units, maybe it's over 10 units outside of the downtown, to be applied only in cases of ministerial review. So that would be SB 35 projects or any other that are qualified for a non-discretionary review. So that would have actually been probably a fun one to attend. So they did provide a lot of comments to staff that will be coming back to the design review board for kind of incorporation of comments for hopefully kind of a final draft that will then be coming to you all for consideration and recommendation. So I did want to provide an update on that.
Great. Thanks, Leslie. All right. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you all. We'll fix our audio problems.